Hello, children. How are you all? Shall we continue the lesson collectors? In the previous part of the lesson collectors, we had seen that the teachers and students had been on an adventurous walk and it was raining heavily. At last, they found a house and took shelter. Mr. and Mrs. Brown were the occupants of the house. Teachers were made to occupy the living room and children in the kitchen. Children were surprised to see the empty kitchen. Teachers were offered with a cup of tea, and students were supposed to be served with the orange juice. Students had noticed few weird appearances of Mrs. Brown and thought that Mr. and Mrs. Brown may be vampire, were scared enough to stay in the house. Pete was eager to go out and inform the teachers who were sitting in the living room. Shall we continue the lesson, children? Open your textbook and follow as I read. Wayne, it is all a bit mysterious. I wonder what's in that other cupboard. Don, leave it alone. Tracy, if she catches you, she'll be mad. Wayne, she won't catch me. He opens the cupboard door. Behind it are dials, digital readouts, colored lights, and a mass of other electronic equipment. Glenn, what on earth is all that doing there? Wayne, is it some kind of a computer? Carol, those things, are they figures or words? Glenn, some kind of foreign language. Tracy, look at all those lights. Don, it's real space age stuff. Glenn, what could it be for? Wayne, spying. Glenn, you think so? Carol, close the door, someone's coming. They close the door, but it doesn't quite shut. Pete comes back in. Wayne was curious to know the whereabouts in cupboard, but Don and Tracy warn Wayne not to touch. But Wayne opens the cupboard and finds dials, digital readouts, colored lights, and electronic equipments. All the children were surprised to see and were unable to find out what was written on it. Don confirms that it is a space age stuff. While conversing, Carol hears a sound and alerts other friends that someone was coming. They close the door, but slightly it was open. Pete comes back to the kitchen. Moving on to the next part of the lesson. Pete, I think we need help. Carol, what did Mr. Hunt say? Pete, nothing, he couldn't. Wayne, couldn't? Pete, I went quietly. I was a bit scared. The door of the other room was partly open. I saw Mr. Hunt first, sitting there, not moving, staring at nothing. Glenn, you mean he was thinking about something? He was tired. Pete, no, I do not. He was drugged. Miss Swan and Mrs. Jones are the same. I crept a bit closer. Then I could see them too. They were sitting there blank as if they had been turned to stone. Carol, and Mr. and Mrs. Brown? Pete, they were looking at them and I don't know. Talking. Carol, what were they saying? Pete, no idea. They weren't really talking. It sounded. They were just sort of hissing and clicking at each other. Tracy, I want to get out of here. Wayne, I'm getting out right now. He goes to the back door and tries to open it. It's locked. There is no key. Don, let me try. No, it just won't open. Glenn, how about that window? Wayne tries the window. Wayne, no chance. It won't move. Tracy, smash the glass. We have got to get out. Carol, here, try Mr. Hunt's walking stick. Use that, Wayne. Wayne tries to break the glass with the stick. Wait, it won't break. He hits the glass again. It just bounces off. Glenn, let me try. He takes the walking stick and uses it. It's no use. The glass is like steel. Pete, come on. We'll see if there is a way out through the front. They begin to crowd towards the kitchen door when Mrs. Brown comes in with a tray of drinks. Moving on to the explanation. Pete entered the kitchen and was very much worried. His friends inquired about his worry. He says that when he had been to the living room, teachers were not moving, not talking to each other. Had a suspicion that they were drugged. Carol asks about Mr. and Mrs. Brown, for which Pete says that they weren't talking, but he could hear hissing and clicking at each other. Tracy and Wayne get scared and try to open the back door, but it was locked and key was also not found. Glenn suggests to open the window. Wayne tries. Even here, he does not succeed. Tracy, who was desperate, asked to smash the glass so that they could escape. Wayne tries to break the window glass with a stick, but in vain. He hits again. It just bounces. Glenn also tries and concludes by saying that glass is like a steel and it is unbreakable. Pete calls his friends to go out through the front door, and they all crowd near the kitchen door. But at the same time, Mrs. Brown enters with a tray of drinks. Mrs. Brown, good heavens, what's all this row? What on earth have you children been doing? Carol, we want to live. Mrs. Brown, in this fog? How can you? Pete, what have you done to Mr. Hunt and the others? Mrs. Brown, done? Nothing. We had been having a cup of tea. Carol, Pete says you have drugged them? Mrs. Brown, nonsense. Where in this world did you get that idea? She notices the cupboard left partly open. I do wish you'd have the courtesy not to interfere with these cupboards. Glenn, what is that stuff in there? Mrs. Brown, what do you mean by stuff? It is electronic equipment. It belongs to my husband. He is a scientist. It's part of his work. Pete, and why is the back door blocked? Mrs. Brown, it always locks when you close it. It's a burglar proof lock. The windows are burglar proof too. My husband doesn't want to run the risk of having any expensive equipment stolen. Tracy, they have been trying to scare us, saying there was something strange about this house and about you. Moving on to the explanation part, Mrs. Brown became furious and asked children as to where they were moving. Carol, who was very scared, says that they want to leave. But Mrs. Brown surprisingly asks as to how they would go out in the fog. Pete, who had a suspicion of his teachers being drugged, shouts at Mrs. Brown as to what she had done to teachers. She calmly replies that they were having a cup of tea. Carol, in a crying tone, says that Pete had said them that the teachers had been drugged. Mrs. Brown gets angry and shouts at children as to from where did they get such an idea. At the same time, she notices the partly open cupboard and pinpoints that the children should have the courtesy not to interfere into others' things. Glenn inquires about the stuff in the cupboard. Hearing the word stuff, Mrs. Brown gets angry and says that her husband is a scientist. Those are electronic equipments which belongs to his work. Immediately, Pete asks about the blockage of the back door. Mrs. Brown clarifies that doors and windows are burglar proof for safety purpose as there was a fear of expensive equipments being stolen. Tracy innocently says that her friends had scared her by saying that there was strange about the house as well as the Browns. We'll continue the next part of the lesson in the next class, children. Assignment of the day. Try to answer these three simple questions. First one, what did children find in the large cupboard? Second, why was Pete not able to understand the conversation of Mr. and Mrs. Brown? Third one, why were children not able to open the windows and doors of the house? Meet you all in the next class, children. Thank you.